Welcome to Behind the SME, the podcast where we dive into the stories of founders, leaders, and visionaries of small and medium-sized enterprises. As the CEO of a small business myself, I want to uncover what drives the success of SMEs by talking to those who are in the trenches, building their businesses from the ground up. I hope you enjoy the episode. Tom, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So good to see you. We normally start by explaining how we know each other. So I'll probably do the honors because it's not that simple, is it? You're a client of my business, Keen's. So we've done your R&D tax claims the last couple of years.
Yeah, 3 or 4. I think it might be the 4th claim now.
4th claim. But strangely, we know each other from outside of that world too, don't we?
Yeah.
We only worked that out at a wedding.
Was that 2 years ago?
It must have been a couple of years ago. Yeah, so your partner is one of my oldest friends, which is a very funny kind of coincidence. But yeah, thank you so much. And we have a nice kind of group of clients that we hear about through the various members of the team, and your business name always comes up, and there's always a kind of, look at this design, look how cool this company is. So know a lot about obviously what you've been doing, but your story is fascinating, and really looking forward to hearing a bit more about it. So why don't you start by just introducing yourself for us?
Yeah, so I basically went to Bournemouth University, studying product design. Started off my career designing super yacht camera systems, which was pretty wild, and ended up in all kinds of places, military and private, and then went to Dyson for a little bit before starting my own business. So I've been running Aetha Design now for about 7 years. We're a product design consultancy based on the South Coast.
Cool. Tell us about the type of products you design.
Yeah, all kinds of different stuff. So we're split into entrepreneurs and startups versus small businesses, and then some larger businesses. So companies people might have heard of, things like Osprey, backpacks we've worked with, recently working with Caterpillar, which are kind of the big names. And then most of our business is around kind of smaller entrepreneurs. So we've designed a lot of refillable water bottles, your kind of ocean bottle type things, through to sports products. I don't know, it's just a huge variety, which is why probably the guys, when they come back to the office and hear what we've been working on, it's probably some quite novel ones in there.
Yeah, that's it. It says on your website that I'll get wrong, but it says something along the lines of, we're based next to a busy port in the center of Poole, and you can hear ships docking in the background and stuff like that. And you say it proudly, I think, and you say, we're unconventional in where we're based. We're also unconventional in the way we work. Just explain that to us a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're based on Poole Quay. We're literally in between Sunseeker and Lush. If you know Lush, are kind of these two big local businesses. We don't do anything by the book. We love to work on kind of weird and wonderful projects, and we do have a filter on what we work on. I think that's really critical with a small business, is to understand the kind of people that you want to work with. And sometimes the hardest thing is saying no to people. So we like working on products that either we want ourselves, either are good for the planet, or just good fun. We work on such a big variety. But for us, it's about working on products that really resonate with us and things that we really want to be proud of and put out into the world.
Yeah. So what's the difference? I mean, you say you don't do things the normal way. For those not in the world of product design, just paint a picture for us. What's the difference between you and a typical agency?
Yeah, so being outside London for once, and we made that really clear early on, is that we want to be in the thick of it. We want to be able to go to the beach in the evenings. And for me, building a business was always about what happens outside of work as well. And I think for me, that was a really critical decision, is building the right team. Also, just being able to do different things in the weekends, get out of the office and build a good culture around the team and what we do, and really kind of play into the fact that we can go out on the boat on the evening, and we do things with the team, like we take them on a boat trip in the summer and different things in the winter, and that kind of keeps us going. So,
and how do you balance that with, the needs of a small business and running a commercial entity? It must be tricky.
It's tough, and we've gone through different phases of that. So quite early on, I had this idea. I thought it would be really cool. Every other Friday, everyone can work on whatever they want. And the idea of that stemmed from like, let's give back to our staff. Let's let them kind of work on projects and let them build their skill set, and also hopefully build some IP for ourselves. So the idea was to start Aetha as a consultant, but then it always wanted to build our own startup ourselves. So the idea of that was to come up with ideas and start building things. But as you say, it does get tricky at that point. We got busy, and that had to go. So that's now turned into our team dinners on a Friday lunch. So we all get around and we talk, and we all have lunch together on a Friday. But yeah, it's quite difficult to balance that, particularly as you go through different stages of stresses as a small business. As you know, we kind of, and that comes back to that filter. I find what we try and do is look after our team, look after our clients. And my kind of thought process is that the money will come. And it's kind of early days. We really pushed that, and actually maybe a bit too far, is that we did everything we could for every client. And, we really made sure that every client was looked after. And I think that comes from previous experiences in other small businesses where that wasn't the case. And I kind of learned the hard way of like actually seeing what an unhappy client looks like, and not wanting to do that in my own business. So we really pushed that for the first couple of years, and then the aim for the last couple of years is to kind of improve our efficiency, but without losing that client relationship. And it's it's not easy.
It sounds like it's constantly about trying to get the balance right between the draws and the desires, and being smart by your client, and appreciating that you still got bills to pay, and you want to grow, and are like, I'm gathering that cultural fit is a big part of your company setup, your team setup. How do you ensure that they're the right person coming in during the interview process?
So what we do, we have a slightly different interview process to some other companies, where we
surfing
trip, take them out of the boat. So we do a project with them as part of the process. And that's a paid consultancy project. So it's normally a live brief. But I think what we want to do is really understand how they work. And what we're looking for is good problem solvers. Anyone can have a really polished portfolio. But being able to show us in a short space of time how they can solve problems and deliver. But then also what they're like as a person. So for me, you guys are bigger business than we are. So we're like, only kind of 4 or 5 of us at a time. You've got to get on with each other on a personal level. You're literally in the same room together every day. So that's one thing. We are 100% in the office, which I think is quite unusual to most companies. But I think it really builds that kind of together feel, We're constantly collaborating.
Such a good idea. I've never heard anybody do that, but why wouldn't you? It's so smart. And so just explain that to me. So you have a paid for brief, you're looking to find someone.
Exactly.
You
so
bring them into the project as a contractor, but give them a specific part to work on.
That's it. So we're mindful of people's time, and we don't want to waste people's time. So it is paid. We give them at least a week, and really it's down to them. So we say, it's X amount of hours. How long time do you need to actually do that well?
And they're in every day for the week?
No. So they do that remote.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's remote. So we generally, so that's over a Zoom call if they're far away, and then they'll come in and present the work to us. And really that's the time to get to know them, to understand how they work. And we find it's just a great way of understanding people. When you're a 4-person business, someone joining us 20% of your team, it's a really, really important thing. And so far it's worked. One of our guys has been with us coming up to 5 years, I think now. And it's kind of, so it's hopefully finding the right people. Gives that longevity of team.
Hiring slow is a great takeaway for sure. Let's talk a little bit about Dyson and your time at Dyson. Tell us about some of the products you're working on and some of the experiences you had there.
Yeah, so it was a pretty wild time. It was back in 2014, I think I joined, which was the time when there was still 1,000 design engineers. It was huge. It was actually, it felt like going back to uni. It really did.
Yeah.
Average age, I think, was about 26, and I was in my kind of early 30s. So I was going from being someone quite junior to someone with a little bit more kind of seniority, but the projects within the first week, you're just being taken around. It's like Willy Wonka's factory of ideas, different things being worked on. I worked on robotics to start off with, so robotic vacuum cleaners, and then going into lots of different battery powered products. And at the time, there was lots of top secret stuff that I still can't talk about. That a lot of that was cut back, and then I was there for the start of the car, which was a pretty wild time because
there's a Dyson car.
Yeah. Did you not hear about this? Oh, right. So basically, I'd been there a couple of years, and I was working in quite a technical team. We worked with motors a lot, so there's a couple of my guys got pulled into the secret room, probably about the size of the room we are in now, and it had a board over the door, and it was no one allowed in, no one allowed to talk about what you're working on. And he was building an electric car.
Wow.
And they worked on it for a couple of years, and it changed shape and sizes. And to my knowledge, it's the first product that Dyson has spoken about that they haven't actually released, which was a huge thing because the secrecy is absolutely incredible. It's fingerprint access. Even the marketing team weren't allowed to know what we were working on. It was that level of access. There's people in the business, we didn't know what some people were working on. And so, the car was huge, and he started hiring quite aggressively for the car. And then I left just before it got announced and then binned. So it didn't go to market. I think it was just too expensive. It was, too expensive to build. But
wow. So did you have, meetings where James Dyson was there, and what was that like?
Yeah. So it was great, actually. I made a conscious effort, actually, before joining Dyson, that I wanted to start consultancy. So I used my time at Dyson as kind of my prepping years, I guess, with that in the back of my mind. So top of my list was to meet James and have meetings with James. So I moved around quite a lot within the business. I made sure that I maybe spent a year at a time on working on different things. I quickly realized the team that I went into had very little time with James. So I kind of decided early on, right, I need to move out, and I need to go into a team that he really spent a lot of time with. And having meetings with him was just a real eye opener. He was such a good decision maker. I think that was the first thing for me, is that he was so sure of his own decisions. And I would show him a product that he wouldn't have seen for 3 to 6 months. He'd know every radius, every fillet of the product. He'd know what color it needed to be. He'd know, and he'd make decisions on the spot that we'd been designing, building, testing. I'd be taking him prototypes that are covered in masking tape and super glue and things like that, and he'd say, like, no, that's what you have to do. You have to take it down this road. And sometimes you walk out the meeting like, I'm not sure I agree. And then you do it, and then a month later you go back to him like, that was absolutely the right decision.
Wow.
But then he was also more than happy to fail. I think that was a big thing that I learned from James in the time at Dyson, was failure is a part of everything. You have to question the experts. You have to really push things past what people are telling you is possible. And that was one of his biggest thing was, if an expert tells you it can't be done, take it away and try and prove them wrong. It was that kind of atmosphere. That's what we were really trying to do. But it was that decision making. I think that's the one thing that I really took away.
So how did he encourage this culture where failure was accepted?
Yeah, I think it was the design, build, test process.
Yeah.
It was just try things, and we had, as I said, it was 1,000 engineers in this huge building. We had open access to pretty much any materials. We had labs doing all kinds of things, sound chambers, all this kind of stuff. And it was pretty much, I mean, it was within reason. It was free reign once you're on a project to kind of push that project as far as you can go. And there's no wrong answers, you know. You really could just push things until you couldn't push them anymore. And, you know, and there were big failures like the car, you know, is that example of actually, no, we're going to do everything we can to try and make this possible, but then also understand when to call it a day, you know. And while I was there, I saw some quite big profile projects not go any further outside the lab. And that's really tough sometimes for a designer. You know, you've been pouring your heart and soul into this thing for years, and then for someone to come along and say, right, we're not doing that anymore, that will never see the light of day.
It's so interesting how, you know, your time at Dyson, you witnessed firsthand this balance between creative desire, innovation, and the commerciality. And he was obviously quite extreme and said, like, keep going, you know, try and break it, happy for you to fail. But at the end of the day, it's still a commercial entity.
Absolutely.
And you know, you talked a bit about Aetha and how you want to design, you know, balance lifestyle and commerciality, and it's kind of this constant push and pull together. In both environments. It must have been a hard place to leave. Wow. Surely, like, that's
so
every design engineer's, you know, mecca from what you've described. Like, it's not my world, and it sounds incredible. But,
I mean, there was a few things. I mean, I had made the decision before I went that I was going to start a business. Sure. I think, like, for me, I think, it's not a common thing with a designer to kind of want to start a business and have that kind of commercial want, I think. But I kind of made that decision before I went. So I was always there for a limited time. Right. I think in my head, it wasn't the end goal. Which is why when I was there, I'd spend time with different people, put my name forward for everything I could, ended up on a program with the CEO, which was amazing. So the CEO at the time, Max, ran this program where it was about 10 or 15 of us were chosen every year to go onto this management leader program, and from all different walks of the business. So I was in a room with someone from marketing, accounts, sales, and be like, who wants to go and, you know, I was presenting to Currys as a design engineer, you know, getting these opportunities to see different parts of the business and try and learn different things from Max as well, the CEO at the time, who was, again, this really aspirational chap growing up in Switzerland and becoming the CEO of this huge business.
It's interesting that you mentioned that going into the business, you always had the intention of starting your own, because I did something similar. I've had a couple of people that I've interviewed on this podcast before say something similar, and actually that intention is being obviously quite powerful for them. I certainly found it when I was at a prior firm, knowing that, you know, that was never going to be my end destination. I looked at things through two lenses. I looked at it through the lens of, okay, as an employee, I need to take this on board, but I'm also looking at it through the lens of, I wonder why this decision's being made, or I wonder why it was delivered like this and what impact this would have. And if it was me standing there, would I also do this? And what would I change about my approach there? Is this good? What's the feeling afterwards? What's the coffee room chat afterwards about how we feel? And it just gives it a slightly different perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think having that knowing and understanding, I've spoken to designer friends of mine who, when I was thinking about the consultancy, I talked to them, you know, they're at consultancies in London. I say, like, right, how do you get new clients? I don't know. What's the day rate of the business? Like, how do you charge? Like, I don't know. Like, what do you mean? Like, not interested at all. I think I've always been really interested in that kind of business side to it as well, which is where the kind of the consultancy was a natural fit, and then starting our own startup on the side of that as well was always the kind of the next thing on the list. I've always liked a distraction. It doesn't work for everyone, but for me, having a side project really is my way of not getting burnout. I think burnout is such a common thing with business owners, and I feel like when you're working on one thing 100% of your time, it's so valuable sometimes just to have something else, just to flip and just have that kind of full reset mode, you know. It's that kind of to go back to.
I'm fascinated by this. So to avoid burnout, you have another project.
Yeah, maybe it's not.
We should clarify what the other project is to bring it to life. Tell us
Yeah,
about the other
so we've got a
project.
sunglasses business as well, which was started a couple of years ago. A friend of mine called me up and said, I got this idea for this pair of sunglasses. And he said, I sat on my sunglasses. I was in Iceland on this trip. I sat on my sunglasses miles away from anywhere, blinding sun. I had a pair of goggles in my other pocket. So I took the rubber off the goggles, put them onto my broken sunglasses, and you wouldn't believe how well they work. And I'm thinking, they don't sound good. And they're like, okay, bring them in, show me what it, and he made this prototype pair, brought them in. It's like light bulb moment. It's like, these are insane. These are so much better than how you describe them. Let's start a business. So we decided to go 50-50 in. I design the product, I run the business. He's a videographer, filmmaker.
Sure.
So he does all the content side and and has the vision. And it's been great fun. And it's really, so there's a few reasons why I always wanted to kind of have that startup experience myself. One is to put ourselves in the shoes of our clients.
Okay.
Because I think it's so important. If we're, a lot of our clients are first few years in business, they come from some completely different career. They're understanding how to market a product. Lots of things that comes outside of our remit as product designers, just how to build a business in general. So down to finding factories, costing, bill of materials, all of these things. We wanted to go through that ourselves.
Sure.
So then we can consult, and actually launching a product as well is a whole minefield, So through Kickstarter, we crowdfunded the product.
Okay.
Which is great. And we've now done that with clients as well. So we've consulted on launching products through Kickstarter. But yeah, no, it's been a great experience, and we've grown a sustainable business through that, which is great fun.
I think this is the perfect point to say what the brand is.
And
then people can go and have a look. And
I
just tried them on a moment ago, and I'm shocked I've never seen anything like it or felt anything like it.
Yeah, they're called Times Eyewear. We are times.com.
Yeah. Go and check them out because they're very unique. I would suggest.
Thank you.
I'm interested by the concept of a side project to help out with burnout, because you would assume the opposite. If I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, I want to do less, not more. What's that?
For me, it's putting 100% thought into one thing at one time.
Yeah.
I think my burnout comes from just getting so in the weeds with a project.
Okay.
And for me, there's two ways to get outside of burnout. One is a distraction in business, and the other is a distraction in sport. And that was one of the things for me to get back down to the coast. I'm a windsurfer, have been forever. And that's my true relax, when you're really not thinking about that thing that's causing the burnout.
Yeah.
And I think I can relate to the startup almost like that sport experience. It's that being able to completely relax by not thinking about that one thing that's really kind of creating that burnout.
That's so interesting. Yeah. I've never heard that perspective, but I completely understand it.
Yeah. I found it works for me. I'm sure it doesn't work for everyone. I think
that's super cool. Tell us about the early days of Aetha. Obviously you've got and now loads of water on the bridge, and people should go and look at the brand. It's Aetha. We should explain that.
Yes.
And go and have a look at some of the products you make and design. That there's some really cool stuff on there.
Sure, thank you.
But let's say you were talking to yourself 7 or 8 years ago. What advice would you give yourself now?
Yeah. So I would say think about who you start the business with, because basically what happened was I was at Dyson. I was 4 years in. Actually, I should probably go back a little bit further. So I was a month into Dyson, and I got this email. Guy in Arizona. And the email read, I've seen your portfolio online. You've got the exact skill set I'm looking for. I'm starting this camera business. We're all mountain bikers. Come out to Arizona. I'm thinking, is this for real?
Yes, question, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, is this a scam?
Yeah.
That was my first thing that thought, this is too good to be true. So I had to chat with the guy, and he's like, no, I'd come out for 6 months. Like, you're going to love it out here. We really want to develop this camera system. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. But I'm in my probation at Dyson. I'm not even through the probation yet. So I'm like, no, I've decided I need to do this. I've got to stick it out. So I turned him down, but I said my old boss from my previous company, I knew he had just left as well. So I was like, look, give this guy a call. And lo and behold, they built a business together over the next couple of years. And it was about 3 or 4 years later.
It's now called GoPro.
So yeah, I got a video call from my boss a couple of years later, and he said, like, right, what are you doing? When are you coming back to the coast? I've got this client, that they've been working together for a couple of years at this point. But what do you want to do? And I said, I really want to start a consultancy. And he was fully on board with that. He said, like, cool. Like, we've got this office now, we've got a team, we're building up on the kind of the camera side, but let's start a consultancy together. So I wrote a business plan, took it down to him. It was kind of all go at that point. So I was still at Dyson. I built the website. My side project at the time was building the Aetha website, building kind of speculative products on there, and building a kind of a name for ourselves, even though we hadn't started yet, sure. Literally. Decided to literally move everything down there. So partner at the time, we bought a house down in Poole, and got down there and realized pretty early on that he has actually started selling these cameras that he had told me about. He had sold this camera system to this guy. The first client was in Australia, so nice and local, and there was a few issues with the products. So I came in, I was like, look, okay, you deal with that. I'll work on the consultancy side. But it was within a couple of weeks. There was no time for the consultancy because the camera business was just taking everything, and I ended up at the peak of it was I did a trip to Australia. I think the round trip was about 65 hours.
Wow. From
Heathrow to Heathrow.
Wow.
And that was literally to go and see a client, and it was meant to be a little bit longer. I got off the plane, client wasn't happy, the product wasn't doing what he wanted, and they'd cancelled the event that I was going to. So I was pretty much back on a plane, and decided to call it a day. That was kind of first business failure for me. Was we're about maybe eight weeks in, I think, at the time, maybe a little bit longer. We decided to part ways, which was a really tough decision, but it was the right one. We both thought it was the right decision. But what it meant was that I took the consultancy side 100%, he took the camera side 100%, and which was a really nice kind of clean way to do it. But I went from leaving a career at Dyson with a fairly stable, good income to at my kitchen table with no job, thinking that I was coming into an established business, and that was really tough, particularly with a mortgage, a partner at the time. Like, it was not easy, but that's when and the thing is, if I'm looking back to, would I have left Dyson to go to a kitchen table? I don't think I would.
Interesting, yeah.
So actually it's a blessing and a curse, because for me, having that opportunity, or having the drive to go and start a business with him, gave me the opportunity to start the business, really. And it facilitated what Aetha is now. And I learned a lot in that short period of time about working with some of the clients, and how it was running as a business and things like that. I learned a huge amount.
Yeah. I had an interesting, I guess, sliding doors moment that is 8 weeks prior to yours, but not dissimilar. So I never started the business with this guy.
Right.
We had intended to. We kind of wrote this business plan together, and anyway, he was over at mine for a barbecue, and everyone had gone to bed, and it was just he and I just having a few late night beers, talking business, and everyone else had got bored of that chat and had left, as often happens. And anyway, it was a kind of 2 a.m., 7 beers in, we realized that we had quite a fundamental disagreement about what could potentially happen with this business, to the extent that it wasn't something we could get past. And so we never started this business together. And I guess the takeaway from that for me is if I was ever thinking about starting a business with someone, I would want to sit down and have the most frank conversation, just radical candor.
Yeah.
Let's just get everything out on the table so that we can try and see what might happen down the road and how would we handle it. Because the way I see it is, there's actually lots of risks. What if it goes really, really well? And, this business is worth 100 million quid and you own it 50-50. That's scary. Suddenly you're joined at the hip with someone, and this huge amount of wealth. But also it could go really, really badly and you've got this shared failure together.
Yeah.
And there's everything in between. And there's a lot that can go wrong there, and trying to predict it is very difficult. But at least if you get your values lined up and try and see down the road a little bit.
Yeah. I think you hit the nail on the head with the values side. I think it's understanding your values and understanding if that is with your co-founder.
Just on that, listening to you, you have a business that functions for your life and for your clients and for the culture that you want to build. That's different from a 150 person, product design agency that's getting, third round of funding and, is about to list. And, that's a very different journey. And if you had a co-founder or even senior team that wanted that journey, they would find it difficult, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the same, say for Aetha and the sunglasses, we've chosen the slow route to build a sustainable business. So for me, the quality of output in terms of Aetha comes from having time, and how you have time is not having those kind of real stresses, and that's where the filter comes into it as well. It's knowing who you want to work with, so it's finding the right clients, but then also building a base to the business that is sustainable growth. So not hiring too many people too early on. And I've heard stories where people take any project on because they've just got to pay the bills, they've got to pay the staff, and then the quality of work drops, the quality of what you're working on drops, because you're just saying yes to everything. And that's not what I want. We are a small business. We're growing at a rate that's sustainable. And yeah, there's pros and cons to that. Pros being, we don't need a lot to get really busy. Cons being we get over busy really fast, and then it's like knowing when to hire, I think, is a really, really interesting thing. Not an easy one to answer, because with a consultancy, as you know, kind of work comes in ebbs and flows, and it's having a really good team where you can sit them down and say, look guys, I think the next kind of 6 weeks are going to be hard, but they're hard for a reason, because we've got good clients, we've got good projects on. But after those 6 weeks, you can enjoy the lulls as well. And actually, if you build up that financial base to the business, it means that I don't have to then go out and find any project for us to work on.
Yeah. There's a saying about this, which I don't know who made up, but I think it's apt, which is goal orientated, journey minded. You have ambitions as a business, but you're not going to sacrifice the day-to-day enjoyment to reach those ambitions. The journey is really, really important to you and the team, because that's ultimately what you're there for.
Absolutely. Yeah, completely agree.
We spoke before about Dyson and about its culture. How did they kind of bring the culture out in you?
So I think for me, it was really about the risk taking. The CEO at the time had this phrase. He said, "Be bold, take risks, get done, and don't be a dick." And that really resonated. It stuck with me to this day.
Say it again. Be bold.
Be bold, be brave, get shit done, and don't be a dick. And for me, it's the be bold and be brave. That was always drummed into us. Don't just do the mediocre. And we see it with products time and time again. The good ones are the ones that polarize, the ones where, for me, you want 10% of people to be absolutely loving your product. If the other side of 90 people, if they polarizingly hate it, you've done a good job, because
Really? Okay, wow.
what we don't want to do is just create kind of like,
Something's a bit
fine.
meh.
And meh, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, if you just expect it to be like that, it's like wallpaper, you know? So that was really drummed into us, to actually kind of really push things, be bold, take risks.
And be absolutely happy with the 90.
Yeah.
Really, that's so, I mean, again, it's so contrary to what I would see as success in a product design. You going, and I want it to be so bold that only 10 people like it out of 100.
Not always on our clients' projects.
Okay, fine. Okay.
So I should caveat that.
Yeah, okay.
But
still,
yeah,
it's an indication to the mindset, though.
Yeah, it's about bringing emotion to products. I think that is what industrial design is all about, giving a product a soul. And, you know, and not everyone's going to agree with that soul. You know, you're creating a personality, a persona of a product. And Dyson is very good at that, and creating a very clear design language. And we try and, as a business, is inject that soul and empathy into products that we work of.
How do you discover the soul that you're looking for when meeting a founder of a small business?
Yeah, that's interesting. So generally goes back to the user.
Okay.
So it's empathy is really the word. So every product has a user. So you go back through the user journey. How are they interacting with the product? How can we make that experience as empathetic to them as possible? I think people, you really notice, I've just been listening to a Johnny Ive podcast about care in products. He is the absolute godfather of product care, you know, and he says, you know, you really notice when a product has been careless. You know, if you're really fighting with a product, you as the user haven't been thought about. And so it's not the same for every product, but it's creating a product that, really goes back to the user.
Okay. Yeah, that's so interesting. Nice. I love that that mantra, by the way. And I think a really strong mantra, you know, people talk about values, mission, culture. Actually, it encapsulates a lot of it, doesn't it? It says, you know, in one sentence, this is what we stand for. And I love that because it's repeatable, and it's super smart. I imagine that in the work of a design agency, you have to at some point go, this is finished.
Yeah.
Right. Because I don't know, are you guilty of trying to make everything absolutely perfect? And where do you draw the line? It's like, you know, an artist, when is a painting done? How do you know?
It's really tricky. And my kind of personal view on this, that perfection is a killer of good products.
Okay.
I really believe in that. I've seen too many hardware startups fail because they've really gone into the weeds for perfection. And a lot of the time, in my view, it's better to get products into users' hands and understand as quickly as possible whether you've made the right decisions and really learn from the users. So the only way you'll do that is if you launch. And obviously you wanted to make it as good as you can. You know, you don't want to launch a bad product. But there's certain aspects, you know, that actually sometimes you can say, look, that's good enough. Let's get it out there. Let's learn from it, and let's launch a product. Let's build an income, and then let's work on V2.
Yeah.
And we've seen so many V1s get shelved and never hit the market because they've just been worked out.
How does this link with crowdfunding? You mentioned that you crowdfunded your sunglasses business. I've never experienced crowdfunding. Tell us a little bit about
So crowdfunding is been absolutely incredible for hardware startups. You know, top of the bat, it just means that you don't need that seed funding anymore. So the old school route was spend years developing a product before any user's seen it. You then spend an absolute fortune to get it manufactured. You've got a garage with 10,000 units of these things that you don't know anyone wants.
Yeah.
Then you go out and sell them. And then you realize, you know, either people love them or they hate them. You know, either they sell or they don't. You've either got a garage full of 10,000 units or you're buying a second order. Such a big risk. With crowdfunding, so Kickstarter and Indiegogo, what it means is that you can get prototypes made. So we can 3D print products now to such a good degree that they look like the manufactured product, but they work like the manufactured product. but you haven't invested in that tooling. So the tooling, the final investment in ordering that first batch, that's where the real kind of money comes into it.
Right.
But what it means is with Kickstarter is that you can use those prototypes to go out, market your product, have say 30 days, 45 days to pre-order as many products as possible. You then get that money in a lump sum after the campaign. You can use that money to buy your tooling and your first order. And generally what we see is if you've got a good margin product, you can actually order with the Kickstarter money, you can order far more units than you've pre-sold. And then suddenly you've got a business start. You know, that's what we did with the sunglasses. So we've done that 2 rounds now. We're doing our 3rd this summer again.
That's wild. And so they as the investor, they get the product and they get a small piece of equity.
No equity.
Or just they're pre-buying the product
exactly.
and only if it meets a certain
so
criteria.
There's 2 different routes. So there's crowdfunders as well. Things like Crowdcube and things like that, which are equity.
Kickstarter?
Kickstarter
is different to crowdfunding.
So it's a type of crowdfunding.
Okay.
But Kickstarter is pure product. You don't get any equity. So, which is also great from a kind of an admin and legal and complication side of the business.
Sure.
Is that they are essentially pre-ordering one of your products.
Yeah.
And that is it. That's the end of the transaction. It's up to you to deliver that product.
Yeah. And if only 10 people order it, it doesn't get made.
Exactly.
And they
get the money back.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
That's the thing. So yeah, you set a limit. So if you sell over a certain amount, you're essentially funded. Then you get that money. If you don't reach that limit, you don't get funded. They get the money back. So it's a great tester as well. So going back to that, testing a product idea. If you put it on Kickstarter and no one orders any, you know it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
You know.
And I assume it's only right for B2C kind of brand-led products that you can touch and feel, and they look quite cool and a bit different to what you get in the market. If it was something which is fairly generic, it wouldn't do well on Kickstarter.
No, I think there's definitely a Kickstarter community. Okay. So not every product's kind of hit that community. It's being able to kind of tap into the kind of products that are being made. But there's some of them are huge businesses now. There was a roller suitcase a couple of weeks ago that I think it's over $10 million now funded. That's how many suitcases are there? Hundreds, if not thousands of suitcases pre-order, Wow. So there's decent amount of products on there.
Wow. I want to pick up on one topic before we close up. I want to talk about AI.
Yeah.
And just the role of AI in your world and what your experience has been so far, and any predictor in this market's going to be wrong, but just I think a little bit of your take on where you think it might end up.
Yeah, I've been following this really closely because it affects us on a few different levels, I guess. From a business side, AI is being used in lots of different cases. For us in design, it's now being able to be used in creation of images, which is a fairly new thing. So there's Midjourney maybe 2 years ago that was spitting out some really random stuff. More recently, the new ChatGPT engine is so much better, and we're now able to use it to generate concepts. And there's a lot of fear, I think, at the moment in our industry, and my response is actually quite positive. I see it as another tool. People come to us for our ability to problem solve and to create manufacturable products that have that soul. AI can't do that. AI can't replicate that. It can create an image for us to use as a brief, and we have been there. So for me, it's empowering clients to be able to get their thoughts onto paper before they come to us. And then we're also using it as a tool to make our process more efficient, which in turn we'll be able to pass that on to our clients. So I don't see it replacing us anytime soon for those reasons. But it's something to keep an eye on for sure. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think the ability to work in conjunction with AI and get its the best parts from it, but without replacing that human element, is going to be the ticket to success in the long run. In our world, we work in a complex bit of tax advice. You can ask a question to a tool now and it spit out an answer, does it know all of the nuance around your business, where you're going, and the various other projects you've got going on and the like? No. And also, do you want to be doing that, spending your time doing that? Probably not. So, a lot of it's in your ability and skills in prompting and asking the right questions, as you know. So, yeah, I think, like I said, it's working in conjunction. The way I see it is, for my team to be competitive and the best, they need the best tools. The best tools for their job does involve a suite of AI. And, you'd be mad to turn a blind eye to it. But I also think that we'll look back at 2025 and go, we knew nothing at that point. It was so young and we were so stupid. And I think it's going to be, bigger than any of us can imagine.
Yeah.
And, that's pretty wild and exciting. It's going to be a big revolution. But yeah, it's about harnessing it and being really open to its powers and working out where your value truly is. Like you said, you're a great designer, you're a great creator. Creativity comes from the soul. That's very hard for a piece of code to unpack that from what a client's saying in a room. So yeah, it's about working out where you add value.
I completely agree.
Let's finish on one final question. We ask this to everybody. What is the best or the worst piece of advice you think you've ever had?
I think it's make decisions. I think going back to that JD moment, I think that for me was a real pivotal moment, and actually something that I really thought about on a daily basis. Is like, okay, we've got a road here. We can go two ways, but I need to make a decision, because you need to go down one of those roads to make it happen, and actually it might be the wrong road, but that's absolutely fine. And you'll learn, you will fail once in a while. But if you don't make those decisions, then you will never find out. So I think it's about being and understanding your gut, just following your gut. And I trust my gut a lot. And the guys take the mickey in the office because it's a phrase I say a lot, because I've kind of taught my intuition, to make decisions and go with them. But then also to understand when you're going down the wrong path and be able to stop. But yeah, I think that would be the one thing.
Yeah, what an amazing point to end on. Great leadership is often about actually just standing up, making a call and owning it if it's right, and really importantly, owning it if it's wrong.
Yeah.
Or sharing it if it's right. Owning it if it's wrong is probably better. Tom, thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Such an amazing experience that you've shared with us today.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Behind the SME. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps others find the show. If you want to get in touch, you can find our email in the description. Until then, keep building, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.